Hello everybody to the world. This is the Voice of Philosophy Doctor on YouTube Philosophy Classroom. Unit 23, Rousseau's Copernican Revolution. First chapter, Kant and the Copernican Revolution. Immanuel Kant professed that he was awakened from dogmatic slumber through Hume's influence. Dogmatic slumber means traditional metaphysics and rational theology at that time. Hume's skepticism was so destructive as to destroy all the established philosophy and science. Therefore, Kant needed 11 years to overcome the Humean skepticism and to lay the foundation of a new system of philosophy. He passed a silent decade, 1770 to 1781, during which Kant refrained from publishing text. Nevertheless, a great light was given to him in 1769, just before his silent period. I think that Kant's great light was Rousseau's thought in Emile. Immanuel Kant spoke of a Copernican revolution of philosophy, which means the assumption that objects must conform to our cognition. Rousseau's thought of the conformity of object to our cognition as the arrangement of given perceptible materials through the mind. The arrangement of mind is determined as aggregation, comparison, and judgment. Rousseau was not a serious philosopher but a free thinker, which means he made him easier to conceive the epoch-making thought. Besides, Rousseau's writing Emile was a treatise on education. Creed of the Savoyard priest was a special chapter embedded in the Emile. Prior to Kant, Rousseau was also occupied with Hume's skepticism, and he found the way out from it. Moreover, Rousseau worked out the way of reconciliation between Descartes and the whole British empiricism. Rousseau came up with a kind of constitution theory of the knowledge similar to that of Kant. Under the influence of the impression-positivism of Hume, Rousseau could not acknowledge the traditional epistemology of correspondence. Knowledge is said to consist in the synthesis of form and matter, subject and object, thinking I, and perception. Therefore, Rousseau is called to be the predecessor of Kant's so-called Copernican Revolution. Prior to discussing the problem, I like to present the main philosophical publications of that time. Author: Descartes, Locke, Spinoza. Berkeley: Treatise Concerning the Principle of Human Knowledge, 1710. Leibniz: Monadology, 1714. Hume: A Treatise of Human Nature, 1748. Rousseau, Emile, 1762. Kant: Critique of Pure Reason, 1781. Prior to Kant, Rousseau worked out indeed the synthesis of rationalism and empiricism while he prepared the way of reconciliation between Descartes and the whole empiricism. According to Kant, Copernicus had greater success in explaining the celestial motions because Copernicus, contrary to the traditional way, made the observer revolve and left the stars at rest. Likewise, Kant made the object conform to the subject. If our knowledge followed the object as usually sought, it is impossible to find necessarily a priori knowledge, which was made evident through the skeptical empiricism of David Hume. The object following knowledge is an empirical, probable, and a posteriori knowledge. This art of knowledge cannot guarantee the objectivity or necessity of our cognition. Moreover, as by Hume cleared, the extreme empiricism might embarrass the everyday life when it doubts the reality of causality. Chapter 2. Rousseau between Descartes and Berkeley. Rousseau, as a forerunner of Kant, tried to combine the Cartesian principle of thinking I with the empirical principle of sensation, perception, or impression. The activity of subject is connected with the passivity of the object. In this connection, Rousseau goes with an empiricist, Berkeley. Though Berkeley was advocating the idealism of essayist pericope, he acknowledged the active role of mind or myself. being different from other empiricists, Locke and Hume. to the text, to mind, spirit, soul. But besides all the endless variety of ideas or objects of knowledge, there is likewise something which knows or perceives them, and exercise diverse operations as willing, imagining, remembering about them. This perceiving active being is what I call mind, spirit, soul, or myself. Berkeley. A treatise concerning the principles of the human knowledge. Section 2. The nature of perceiving of this perceiving active being is not idea, which refers solely to the sensory data as the object of knowledge. Afterwards, Berkeley gave the name of a notion to the active being mind. We are said to have the notion of mind even though we don't have the idea of mind. In the empirical context, the idea has the meaning of reality, the objective fact. Berkeley called this the active perceiving being mind, spirit, soul, or myself. The spirit is not different from myself. Therefore, the active being of Berkeley can relate to the thinking I of Descartes. In this respect, Rousseau associates Berkeley with Descartes. I exist and I have senses through which I receive impressions. This is the first truth that strikes me, and I am forced to accept it. Emile, Creed of the Savoyard priest, afterwards Creed. Hume's impressions are said to be received through sensations, and my sensations are said to take place in myself, which reminds us of the SS parakeet of Berkeley. However, Rousseau rightly jumps to the realism, unlike Berkeley or Hume. The I and my sensation are distinguished in my inner world. My sensations are independent of the I, and the I is affected by my sensations. The I cannot produce or annihilate my sensations. Thus, not only do I exist, but other entities exist also. That is to say, the opposites of my sensations, and even if these opposites are merely ideas, still these ideas are not me. Creed. Even though Rousseau started his philosophical thought with the methodical doubt and the certainty of the thinking I by Descartes, he correlated the thinking I with the sensation, unlike Descartes. Rousseau interpreted the thinking I as the active subject, and the sensation or impressions are not easily denied. On the contrary, he admitted the independence of sensation from the thinking I. The sensation of me cannot be actually doubted. They are said to have their origin in the outer world, that is the matter. Rousseau jumped to the naive realism. Neither Descartes nor Berkeley would not suppose the objective reality of the world as we sense it. Chapter 3. Rousseau's synthesis of active I and sensation. Even though Rousseau didn't fully understand the difficulty of objective cognition in modern philosophy, he figured out the way of a combination of the active I and the sensation. This power of my mind, which brings my sensation together and compares them, may be called by any name. Let it be called attention, meditation, reflection, or what you will. It is still true that it is in me and not in things, that it is I alone who produce it, though I only produce it when I receive an impression from things. Though I am compelled to feel or not to feel, I am free to examine more or less what I feel. Creed. Rousseau bestowed power of aggregation and comparison on the active I. The impressions are given from outside, but the aggregation and the comparison of impressions are made by myself or active I. These functions occur in me, not in things. Rousseau added the operation of judgment to the active I. When we judge the small and the large of the things, the smallness of the largeness of things don't lie in themselves, but in our judgment. Recalling the Platonic dialogue Phaedo, Rousseau indicates the weak point of the empiricism. Hume proved appropriately the absurdity of the causality through the correlation of impression and idea. However, he could not examine the idea of smallness or greatness through the analysis of ideas, because they don't exist in things but in us. Therefore, the words of smallness and greatness must not be ideas in the meaning of Hume. We cannot see the smallness or greatness, therefore it is not impression. No impression, no idea. Likewise, we cannot perceive the relation itself, even though we can perceive the related two things. On the basis of Humean impression-positivism, all the relationship of things, including causality, cannot be admitted as objective fact. Without the active function of mind, therefore, the world would be chaotic. When it became aware of the two sensations to be compared, their impression is made. Each object is perceived. Both are perceived, but for all that, their relationship is not perceived. Creed. In Hume's place, the comparison or judgment would be said to be the function of imagination. However, this operation of imagination in Hume's system is too evident, objective, and reasonable. Therefore, the function of imagination and habit should be replaced with the function of active I or subject, the universal transcendental subject. Comparison and judgment belong to us. In this respect, Rousseau object effectively Hume's empiricism, not only sense data but also active I necessarily in constituting knowledge. It is almost Kant. Among all representations, the combination is the only one that is not given through object but can be executed only by the subject itself, since it is an act of self-activity. Kant, Critique of Purism, B. 130. Chapter 3. Conclusion. God. 됐다.